Hey friends, this is Marilyn again from tarotclarity.com. The other day, I'm sorry about my hair. The other day I did a video using the Connolly tarot, and I asked 3 questions regarding you know who. And I thought today it would be interesting to put some pip style cards on top of those cards to see if we get a different take on what the read might have been. Now, the truth remains that I used the Connolly deck to receive my messages. So had I used a pip style deck to ask those exact same questions, I'm sure I never would have gotten the same cards, because the message would have been facilitated to me in a different way with different understanding. But I thought it would be interesting. After all, I tried to make this channel an educational channel for those of you who aren't family. And, you know, as you all know, I said it verbatim that, ad nauseum rather, that I've, created this channel for my descendants so that they can learn about me, because one of the things that happened to me was that I had an ancestor, Josepha, who there was no information on, and how I would have cherished having something like this to learn about her. But in the meanwhile, it seems like a lot of other people like my channel, and so I try to make it worthwhile for them. And so I try to show them interesting decks, and I also try to throw some educational value to it. Now let me flip the camera. The first question I asked was, what can we do collectively as a spiritual community to thwart you know who, to put an end to his destructive power? I'll flip the camera. Okay, so the cards pulled with the Connolly were the 7 of Cups, the 5 of Batons, the Queen of Pentacles, and the Hanged Man. Now, you know, when I do these videos, I speak as I think, right? But after I turn the camera off and then I reflect on the reading again, I might fine-tune my understanding of the cards in a way that I hadn't fine-tuned it during the time I was on video. But I did see, 7 as transition, a time of making a decision about something. And for me, I glommed onto the idea of water when I saw this card. So make a decision about stepping it up a notch, right? So, I currently, for me, I thought internally about myself and how I do magic. I do fire. So it occurred to me that maybe to stepping it up a notch for me would mean doing some type of cleansing ritual or doing some type of water magic, which I'm working on at the moment. And facing it head on, right? Is what I said, was facing it head on. And again, there's an abundance of water. Now, I didn't notice this when I use these cards because they're not pip style. I read the pictures, right? But had they been pip style cards, I would have identified the cup and the baton next to one another as being ill at ease with one another. Fire and water are ill at ease. But that's not how I saw it with these cards, because I saw these cards at face value. So I continued to see water and to face the issue head on. And I had some deliberation on what this card meant, but ultimately I decided it meant practical magic. Collectively, practical magic, with the goal of holding him accountable, because here is a depiction of a man who's not being held accountable. Right? So that was the take I had with using these cards. Now, let's superimpose a TdM, and this one is the Jean Noblet by RWS and Tarot, and I'm using it because it's a smaller deck, right? And anyway, and it's clearly a pip style deck. So had I had these cards, and like I said, had I asked the same questions with a pip style deck, I most certainly would have received different cards to come up with a message. But let's take a look at these cards. I'll superimpose them up here. So we have 7 cups, 5 batons, Queen of Coins, and the Hanged One. Now, I think I probably still would have come up with the idea that the ultimate gist of the spread is the point of the magic, the collective effort of ours, needs to be to hold him accountable. He needs to be held accountable. I mean, this guy's mocking us, right? This guy here is not being held accountable. He's kind of like a martyr almost, right? And this guy is being held accountable, but even at the end, he's mocking, But who cares if he's mocking us at the end, as long as we get rid of him, right? Or not get rid of him, but as long as he's held accountable is what I'm saying. It's not to get rid of him. The goal is not to get rid of him. The goal is to have him be held accountable, because ultimately, if he's held accountable, he'll be removed from power. So with the 7 of Cups, I would see as transition. I think I really would still see it as water magic. I think I would, to be honest. I would see it as water magic. I see this card, I see 5 batons though, more as social unrest, not as, facing the situation and going full throttle and going wholeheartedly. I would see this more as social unrest. So, so like uprising of individuals. I see 5 as an uneasy number. Now, because they are together and fire and water don't mix, it would be an uncomfortable thing to have to do. It would be a challenge, right? Even if we're doing something for the greater good, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And here we have the Queen of Coins, and she's not looking at us. She's looking at this, right? So if we want to see her as a practical queen, or a queen who's reminding us of our purchasing power, which today is February 28th. It's the day we're supposed to not be purchasing anything, particularly if we're, live in the United States, because we want to send a clear message. Now, unless it's, medical stuff that you have no option, your life depends on it, don't risk your own life, by not purchasing something you need for your health and well-being. But if it's just a general day and you can resist purchasing something on a whim, please do so, right? So I think this card speaks on that, not just for today, but to remind us of our purchasing power. So if I were to have asked, a pip style deck, this particular deck, what can we do collectively as a spiritual community to thwart him, who, I think the goal would be the same, to have him be held accountable. Remember our collective power. She's looking at social unrest. So to remember our collective power and get dirty. Uprise in whatever capacity. We don't want total chaos, but we want to be heard. And because I'm a little bit of I don't know what else to call myself. I'm a little bit of a spiritual person. I don't know what else I don't want to call myself a witch per se, but people might call me that. But, I'm inclined to do rituals, right? I'm inclined to do some magic. So I'm inclined to do water magic. But the water magic has to be transcending. It has to be elevated. It has to take us someplace. You have to be clear on your objective, and I am clear on the objective. The objective of the water magic, if we do it collectively, the objective, I think, needs to be to hold him accountable and to remember our power, our practical power. Before I said it was practical magic, I'm not so sure I would get the message of practical magic with her, but I get the idea of practical power with her. Our practical power. She's looking at what our practical power is. Our practical power is to stand up, is to unify, is to fight together for a common goal. And for those of us who are so inclined, we could use magic power, water, excuse me. We could do it via vessels of water. Now, for those of you who aren't inclined to do magic, the Seven of Cups could just be to elevate things emotionally, to take it to another tier. Some of you have mentioned that who are supporters, but that you love me. Well, perhaps collectively, we can persuade you as a community here, persuade you to take your heart beyond where it is, to understand the greater good. Okay, let's flip these cards and we'll look at the second question I had. The second question was, what is the defect of the women in his life? Let me just collect these so they're not all over the place. I asked what the defect was. Surely I felt like the women in his life, whether they're his family members or they're his staff, there's something wrong with them. And I wanted to know in earnest what it is, what it is that's wrong with them now. Let's look at the original cards. So when I saw these cards, I saw someone who's indifferent to what falls before him. This card doesn't particularly speak a whole lot to me, but I see there's a stake been put in the ground and he's separated from it by a gate, and he's looking elsewhere. Now, he's awake, but he's complacent. So I saw this as being, they're not paying attention. However, I saw this as being exponentially larger +1, that they might be put complacent, but they're gathering their own momentum. They're gathering a certain amount of power for themselves. They're perhaps gathering a certain amount of prestige. And this thing suggests that they're aware of what's happening, but they're not really concerned with diluting the toxicity. I think I see temperance as diluting toxicity because these are mighty small chalices here. So there's really very little effort on their part to dilute his destructive or toxic nature. They're aware of what's happening, but they're gaining momentum. They're gaining some power of their own. And it was confirmed by the final card, the Quint card, the Hierophant, right? They're falling in line because they're enjoying some power. Now, let's see what my thoughts would be if we had used a pip deck. Okay, so we have Four of Swords, something that's being preserved, something that's being cherished, something that's being protected. Okay, we have the Nine of Swords, which looks kind of painful. There's a lot of stress and a lot of tension. There is some release because this center one does pierce through. But there's like a momentum here. What was something that they were protective of, maybe when he went out in disgrace 8 years ago, or however long ago it was, 4 years ago, when he left in disgrace, right? Maybe they wanted to protect him. Maybe the daughters wanted to. But now he's come back with a vengeance, The threat, the danger, the risk has exponentially +1 increased. So it's not a good place, they might have been like even remorseful or sad or just protective of him because they saw that he was a disgrace. But now they're like, now we have power. I might have actually come up with a similar thought. Now with this card, there is a genuine concern for reducing toxicity of something. So I might have walked away with the thought, had I used these cards, that there might be some among them who are trying to temper him, trying to temper his toxicity. And that ultimately he has too much power. I don't know, maybe with this one, maybe I really would have come up with a similar understanding. A little bit different. This one, I see them as being kind of sleepy and not paying attention. I don't get that here. I get here that they, initially they were protective of him. As I mentioned in the last video, he left in disgrace. So maybe they were just, maybe regarding his daughters, they're protective of their dad. Maybe they saw he was going into dementia land or something and they were protective. But now they have a momentum, Now it's a bigger thing. It's bigger than they are, And it transcends whatever it was they were feeling here, It's just ugly. It looks ugly. There might be an effort. There might be an effort by someone to reduce the toxicity or to temper his toxicity. This is about the women in his life. Maybe his first wife knew his number, I'm sure she did. I'm sure all his wives know his number. I'm sure all his children have his number. That's an American expression. When you got somebody's number, it means you understand what they're about. But ultimately, he's in a position of power. He's got his minions. Maybe my understanding of this read would be similar. Not exactly the same, but similar if I had used the different cards. Okay, the last question was, what's the next best thing to happen to us in the United States? Okay, now I saw this card. Now, traditionally the Rider-Waite-Smith, I think the Eight of Cups is somebody walking away, right? I didn't see it like that over here. I mean, it could be argued that there are 7 cups put aside, and then the 8th cup has the most interest for this individual. But he looks, or she, or whatever, whoever this individual is, looks like they're sort of hopeful or praying or putting all their eggs in this basket. So maybe there's like a hopeful thing, that emerges. And I noticed also at the time when I did the read that although the sky is very dark, there is a spot of sun and some rays that are penetrating. And now we have full thrust sunshine in the form of somebody appearing. Maybe somebody who can speak truth to power, that kind of thing. And then the Queen card, very interestingly, was passing the torch, or this, new person, perhaps it's this guy, grabbing the torch. Now, typically I see the Hermit as someone who is wise, but we put it in the context of the question. The old man who's passing the torch in this context is not wise. He's just on top of his game, he thinks, but somebody's going to take it from him. Someone's there to take it. So afterwards, I felt so good, but then I thought, man, that was just a projection of my wishful thinking, because there's no one who's going to come on the scene and save the day. That's just a fairy tale that I must have been projecting, because I don't know. Maybe somebody will come and speak truth to power. We've been doing that. A lot of people have. But, is there someone who will come and take power away? I also considered that this was our collective, because there's cups, right? It was the 7 of Cups in the first read, and now there's this one. So I was wondering, could this be our collective effort? We're putting all of our magic in this cup, and we're hopeful and we're prayerful, to remove someone or to make him held accountable. Not to remove him, but to have him be held accountable. Because if he's held accountable, ultimately he'll be removed. So I was wondering if our collective wish, our collective effort, if we organize and do it. And I'm still working on it, and I'll share with you what I'm going to do if you want to join with me. And hopefully it'll be my next video. But I was wondering if our collective effort will bring hope in the form of someone who is not a king, but is in a position of knowing, having access to important people. I mean, a knight is someone who serves a king, right? So someone he is on the inside track, who can speak truth to power, and maybe will be in a position to grab the torch. Okay, so had I pulled 8 cups of a pip deck, I would see this as a restoration of emotional well-being. 8 for me is a number of restoration, like unity, lack of chaos. Think of the justice card. When there's justice, there's no chaos. It's a lack of chaos, right? Justice, unity, or chaos has been restored to lack of chaos. Not chaos has been restored. I don't think that makes sense, but it's more unified. So I would have seen this not in the way that I saw that. I would see this as emotional unity. Something that brings hope. Something that restores an imbalance of emotional feeling. Okay, next to that would have been the Ace of Coins. Ace of Coins and Cups work together well. So this would have been in support of that. An opportunity might arise in the form of, now look at this guy, doesn't face in the same direction. This guy faces in another direction. So opportunity may arise in the form of a pedantic individual who does a face-off. Now, I would have seen this guy not in the same way as I saw this. Here, I saw it as someone taking the baton, grabbing it almost from the old man. But here, I wouldn't have seen that. Here, I would have seen a face-off between someone who's young and someone who's wise. I never would have equated this with who. So I would have seen someone who has the benefit of wisdom. Someone who has the benefit of wisdom. Who's leaving here. So for me, I see the direction, right? I saw it here and I see it here. Whereas the young man is approaching, right? Is arriving as a result of collective effort. He's arriving for that. And then he'll take the torch. Here, I'm just seeing the heart being restored, like emotions being restored because of an opportunity being presented. Maybe our collective energy in purchasing and not purchasing and stuff like that makes a dent. Certainly it can hurt the pockets of those people who are trying to milk us, so hurt them. They want to hurt us, hurt their financial pocket too. There's more of us than them. We can show them. We can show them who's got purchasing power, right? Okay, so I get, that's what I would get from here. But then here with this guy facing in this direction is perhaps taking this wisdom with him, but being confronted by wisdom as well. I don't know that I would have gotten a clear message. What is the next best thing that would happen to us if I pulled these cards? Either that or we would receive news we would receive news. Somewhere, someone would be enlightened. The next good thing to happen to us would be a restoration of emotion brought forth as an opportunity, as I mentioned about spending power and stuff like that, but also some enlightenment. Maybe someone will come on the scene who will have the power to enlighten, who supporters. That could be it. So it's a different message. Maybe someone will come on the scene who will be able to speak truth, as I mentioned here, speak truth to power, but speak a different truth. Speak truth that will reach the people that need to hear it. I don't know. I'd love to hear your ideas. It's probably not a great idea to, transpose cards because, as I mentioned, let me flip the camera. As I mentioned, if I'd have used the no blade deck in the first place, I wouldn't have gotten the same cards. And so the message would have been a different message. It would have been no less valid, but it would have been a different message. So to transpose the cards, I did it mostly to show how if you won't get the same message, because you need to read the deck. This is quite a different card than this card, right? It's quite a different message. So, when you transpose, that's why I guess I use this little exercise as a roundabout way to show, you really can't transpose, one system on top of another because you won't get the same answer. Sometimes they're close. I mean, okay, we can all probably recognize the Ace of Coin or the Ace of Pentacles as meaning opportunity being presented of a practical nature. So I won't take that away. I think that's probably a fair thing. It's probably a fair thing to, mention an intelligence, a young man of intelligence entering the scene, because that's how I understand the Knight of Coin. But, the difference for me comes in the pip cards and what they represent, because I do reconcile for the large part, number to suit, and then I also call to mind the Triumph cards, and that's a great tip. By the way, I've mentioned it other times in my videos. But if you're drawing a blank and you can't think of anything for like the Eight of Cups, for example, think of the Justice card. What it means a restoration of, or getting rid of chaos. And so what does chaos of the emotional realm, like restoring chaos of, removing chaos from the emotional realm, would be the Eight of Cups. I see the Eight of Cups as a restoration. Right now we're a mess. I'm a mess, emotional mess. But I see this as hopeful because it's a restoration of emotions brought on by the possibility of a new opportunity. Could be a reference to our spending power, and maybe, that matters. Now, I'm seeing this card going in the opposite direction. I'm seeing, so I don't know how this will play out for you guys. But this card comes first and he's facing this guy. So I see these two having some type of either face off or this guy sharing with this guy some wisdom. But then clearly this guy isn't who I thought he was in this card, right? Here I see this guy as the wise one giving information to a younger one who might be our hope. Anyway, I hope you found this video interesting. And until next time, friends, peace, stay well, and be kind.